Sent you a message with the files which we're going to need for today. Have you got it? Good. Okay then, let's begin our class on suprasegmental features. Okay, can you see the presentation? Oh, and I need to download Pratt. Sorry. So you'll need Pratt to do the tasks. Okay, that's a problem. Garik, do you know how to install Pratt here? It's not here.
I guess it's not possible to install it directly, but I think it's possible to use portable version.
Oh, really? That would be nice. Oh, maybe I can start it from here.
Yes.
Oh, it works. Good. So we're all set. Again, sorry guys, I thought actually for a moment that the class was going to be online, so I had to run here. Anyway, let's begin. So this is my presentation. Okay, so my name is Alexander, and I've worked with Mikhail Alexandrovich for some time, and yeah, I was asked to do this talk on suprasegmental features. So let's begin. What are suprasegmental features? Oh no, that's not what you want to see. What are suprasegmental features? Sorry? Yeah. In phonetics, in phonology. Yeah. What's your name? Nastya. So what Nastya is saying is that suprasegmental features are not connected to individual phonemes, but rather to some larger units. Right. Yeah, that's a nice observation. But if we look at the name, suprasegmental, right? It's over some segments. So what are the basic segments? Are they phonemes or something else? Yeah, well, phoneme sounds it's more or less the same, but any other thoughts? Well, words.
Syllables, maybe.
Syllables, yeah. The guys on the internet, do you have any thoughts? Which segments are we dealing with? Is there anybody out there? Well, we had three ideas basically: individual phonemes, syllables, or words. So suprasegmentals. What are they? Supra over. Any thoughts from those who are online? Okay, basically in phonetics, segments, the basic segments are syllables, right? So suprasegmental features are imposed over syllables, and there is evidence that tells that the syllable is really a basic unit. So one piece of evidence is that in languages with syllabic writing systems, people have troubles actually separating syllables into individual sounds, which they consist of. And another thing which kind of helps us to see that syllables are the basic units of speech is mistakes people make. So when people make mistakes, they usually confuse whole syllables rather than individual phonemes. Like in the book I read, there was this "dear old queen" was substituted by "queer old dean." So we take a whole syllable and we change it by mistake. Okay, so the typical suprasegmental features, I think some of them were already mentioned. Intonation, stress. What else? Yes, someone was trying to say something? Sorry, I can't hear you. Can you say something?
Yeah. Can you
Oh, that's better. Yes.
Great. I just would say that you can see on the slide on the demonstration.
Oh, okay. How to deal with it? Okay, let's do the. Yeah. Problem. Usually you don't see my slides on the demonstration. Let's try to do this again. Because when you reload the... Oh, can you see the next slide?
Yeah, so we see like everything. The next slide, your comments, personal.
That's really bad. How can we do this? Okay, yeah. That's not right.
I think you always can do a PDF version of it, and there won't be this kind of problem.
Well, this kind of makes it less interesting because you can always look at the next page, but I think that's the best thing we can do now. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, I'll make a PDF. Sorry, you could do it. The problem is that the guys online can see everything I can see, and basically, PowerPoint allows you to have presenter view where you can see the next slide and things like that. Okay, I'll send you the link then. What else can I do? I'll send you the file, sorry. Okay. This is... Okay, now you've got the presentation and I can stop sharing screen for a moment because we'll need it again at some point. Okay. Did you get the PDF?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so then, yeah, let's go to the second slide, and we see that typical features, suprasegmental features are, as were mentioned, intonation, tone, and stress, but also rhythm and pauses. And the important thing is that on the next slide you can see that suprasegmental features are not fixed. They're relative. And this makes them quite difficult to analyze because, for example, if someone is shouting, you still can hear stresses and intonation within this shouting, right? So, its intensity is not enough to tell you that something suprasegmental is going on. Another thing is that, for example, if a child is talking, their voice is usually pretty high. But again, even a high voice of a child or of a woman can convey like tone, for example, right? So it's all relative. There are no fixed numbers which could tell us what's going on. Yeah, and this makes study of suprasegmentals kind of difficult and challenging. Okay. So our plan for today is to discuss, so it's on the fourth slide, is to discuss stress, rhythm, tone, and intonation. Okay, let's start with stress. And on the fifth slide, you can see a task. So let's do a small exercise, and I'll do it with you. So I'll share my screen, and I'll ask you to record 2 words. Object. Okay, no. Object and object, and I'll do this with you actually. Good. So open Prat, and then you can. Okay, why can't you see it? And then you can record a new sound.
Время пошло.
Object, object. It might be clipped. Let's hear it. Oh, sorry, it doesn't. Object. No, it's too loud. Object, object. It doesn't work. No. Object. Okay, for some reason you can't see it, but I'll say it in words. So you open Prat, you push new, and then record mono sound. Yes, you should say it yourself. Okay, but after me. Object, object. And then save to list and close. Right, you can. Object, object. Yeah. Try doing this if you want. And I don't know why you can't see. Why can't you see my Prat? Guys on the internet, can you see my screen?
I can see it.
Good, because there's a problem on the projector. People can't see it. Our microphones are mono sounds, so we should record mono sound. So, so we have the sounds recorded. Now, we need to annotate them. So you save the sound, close, and then you open your Prat window. You click annotate, and then to text grid. Right? So annotate to text grid, and then we'll need 2 tiers, word and sound. So first sound and then word. We would not need any point tiers. Right, then with shift pressed, we choose the sound and the text grid, view and edit. And we can annotate our words. So this is object. Basically, guys, if you want, you can come here and watch me doing this. If you need to. Oh, you can see the online translation. Good. Okay, then you can follow. Right. So there's no problem. Okay. So we quickly annotate the vowels. All right. So this is the first one. Object. This is the second one. Object. So you can see on the waveform here that the amplitude is really high on some parts of this thing. So here the amplitude is high, and here the amplitude is high. Here it's high, yeah. Okay, yeah, you need to give it some time before, like, yeah, before.
Object.
Is it good? Okay. Okay, but basically you have at least one word, and you can analyze it. So okay, let's annotate. So the peaks on the waveform show us where the vowels are, right? So we can see them. On the one hand, we have peaks on the waveform. On the other hand, you can see formants here. So this tells us that we have vowels, right? So this is the first vowel, this is the second vowel. And you even don't need to listen to it. You can see the peaks, you can see the formants, and basically these are our vowels. Here and here. Okay, so the first one is object. And the second one is object. Okay, so what are the differences? How can we analyze the differences between accented and between stressed vowels and unstressed vowels? What should we do, Pratt-wise? What is our routine? What's the next step? How do we analyze the differences in stress patterns between the two words? Do you have it? Good. Good. So now we can annotate the vowels, and we can discuss this. So what's any ideas? What can we analyze? Yeah. You should annotate this yourself. So as I said, you look at the waveform and also at the formants, and they will tell you that where the vowels are. So the darkest areas are where the vowels are. So any ideas? What should we do, guys, on the internet? I don't want to do this my monologue. Okay, if you have no ideas what to do, at least you do have ideas, I believe, which parameters we could measure. No? Thank you. What's your name? Kirill. Okay, thank you, Kirill. So frequency and amplitude. That's right. How do we do this? Which buttons do we push? Okay, I'll do it myself then. So in Pratt we have different menu buttons. And to analyze amplitude, you push the intensity button, show intensity. can see intensity contours.
Object. Object.
So in my pronunciation, for some reason, the second vowel in the word object, is more intense than the first vowel. And you kind of can hear it.
Object.
Right? In the second word, the vowel e is more intense. You can see yellow peaks, right, of intensity here. So this is one parameter we can measure to analyze stress. The other parameter is pitch, as Kirill said. So frequency, fundamental frequency. To see it, we push pitch, show pitch. Right? And since the highest point we have here is 128 and maybe 140 hertz, because my voice is kind of low, we can change pitch settings and say that, okay, the highest point will be 300 and the lowest point will be 50 hertz. Here are the pitch contours. So we can see that it starts low, then it goes up. It starts low and then for some reason, okay, let me see. For some reason it can't tell what pitch is, but it goes up.
Object.
You can hear it, it goes up. Right, so pitch and intensity. What else can we hear? Can we analyze? We can analyze vowel quality. To do this, we push formants, show formants. And again, to make it more kind of visible, we change the number of formants to 2 because it's enough for our analysis, and format ceiling for 2000. And here are the formats. And we can see that vowel quality in the first vowel R is different in the accentuated and not accentuated cases. Can you see? Oh, okay. So let's follow this routine again. So you open Prad, the sound, right? Then you click annotate to text grid. You write the names of your tiers and you get your text grid. Then you press shift and choose both the sound and the text grid. View and edit. And now you can just pick some point on the waveform and press on this gray circle thing. Okay, and then annotate. Another thing we can see is duration actually. So this sound is like 80 milliseconds, and this sound is 70 milliseconds, right? So duration is also a factor here. Okay. So are there any questions on analyzing vowel stress in Pratt? Do you need to run something again? No? No, on the spectrum. you can see the waveform, right? So above this thing here is the waveform. And on the waveform, there are peaks, right? Very high, like very high. If you zoom, those are waves, right? Waves going really high, and this is an indication that a voiced event is happening. So this could be a sign of a sonorant, maybe a nasal or something, or a vowel. But we know that we don't have any sonorants here, right, in the places of the peaks, so we know that those are vowels. And this is how you annotate them. Okay, let's get back to the presentation. So this was a simple analysis of stress. Okay, and we can discuss this during the break, actually, if you need to. Okay, so let's move to the 6th slide. Yeah, as we have seen, stressed vowels, at least in my case, were longer. Probably they were more intense. Their quality was different. And there were pitch changes, right? The thing is, in phonetics, it's almost impossible to tell which of the parameters is the most important. They work together, and we can't say that, for example, intensity is the only thing that defines stress, especially in connected speech, when everything is assimilated and all of the acoustic cues become less pronounced. But there are interesting rules of thumb to define stress. For example, you could tap. So if you start like moving your hand, right, like trying to accentuate something. For example, if you say multiple, your hand taps on the stressed syllable, right? Or I don't know, multi-channel, right? You have 2 taps, and it means that there are 2 stresses. And there were even propositions to analyze stress as a physical movement. So there was this idea that lung action, strong lung action, produced stress. And one of the researchers said that we should follow the movements of the chest to analyze stress. But this idea was incorrect, but I think it illustrates that the question of stress is not really easy. Yeah, and we need to consider different factors to tell what stress is and how it works. Okay, the Russian language. So in the Russian language, have you seen this formula 1, 2, 3, 1? No? Guys over the, are you there? Guys on the internet, are you there?
Yes.
Good. So have you seen this one? 1, 2, 3, 1. Can you kind of tell what it means? It's slide number 7. No. Okay. This formula says that if you have stress on a syllable marked as 3, it will be the most intensive one. It will have the highest volume, let's say. And pre-stressed syllable, which is marked as number 2, will have comparable volume. And other syllables will be less intense. So this is the idea of Russian, of stress in Russian, right? It's not one syllable that is stressed, but also the previous one, it also changes. It becomes more pronounced. We know that unstressed vowels are reduced. We have a lot of schwas and schwa-like sounds in Russian. The prosodic nucleus, this is the stressed and pre-stressed syllables which are marked 2 and 3 in this formula. So the vowels in them are longer. It's slide number 7. And sometimes the pitch of stressed vowels can increase. And I made a recording of me saying the word ananasovый. So it has a lot of similar vowels, which is kind of nice. Ananasovый, which means pineapple-ish. Yeah, and we can see basically the analysis we just did for object and object with red dots, which are formants. The blue line is pitch, and the yellow line is intensity. And we can see that the third vowel has a peak of intensity on the one hand, but its pitch is lower because it's affected, probably because it's affected by the following fricative consonant. So the mouth is already closing at this point, and that's why the pitch goes down. Also, if we look at the red lines, we can see the vowel quality in the first 3 vowels is a bit different. So the first and the third vowels are similar in formant values, but the second one has lower F1. Yeah, so this is basically what happens quite often in Russian when vowels change their quality. Judging by this picture, which cue is more important? So is it formants, vowel quality, is it pitch, is it intensity? Come again? I'm sorry, there are connection problems. Maybe, I don't know, you could try to repeat this or write this in chat, because we can't hear what you're saying. Oh, some people write it. Yeah, okay. So intensity. Yeah, okay, intensity is quite prominent here. Makes sense. Can we consider vowel quality? Yeah, the yellow line, the intensity, yes. I agree with you. Anything else? Well, for this particular case, I would say that intensity is kind of works, but you can see that the difference between the second and the third syllable is not that pronounced. And this is actually what the rule on the previous slide was telling us, that the pre-stressed syllable has similar intensity to the stressed one. So yeah, we have a peak, but it's not that radical. So we could say that actually intensity alone is not enough here, because the difference between the 2 vowels is not that big. But we also can see vowel quality on the third vowel is like the best quality. So it's the most R sound of all the words, right? And this tells us that this is, as I said in the beginning, there is no single cue that could say that this is stressed syllable and this is not. We need to analyze everything. And here we can see that pitch for some reason went down, but intensity was higher. Vowel quality was kind of as we expected, but again, in the first syllable, the vowel quality was similar, right? So different cues tell us different things, and we only can analyze everything together. What about the English language? On the next slide, you can see Okay. There was supposed to be an animation, but anyway. So let's consider words like radio, cupcake, and criticize. What do they tell us about stress? Radio, cupcake, criticize. Which cues are important in English? We can see that all of the words have stress on the first syllable, right? Radio, cupcake, and criticize. What are the differences between the vowels in those syllables? Try pronouncing them and thinking about them. Okay, remember when we did the first exercise with stressed object and object, we saw that duration was important for stress, right? Let's look at cupcake. So the R in cup is a short vowel. Yeah, but there's no doubt that the stress is on the first syllable. Cupcake. So duration is not enough. Let's think about intensity. Criticize. Criticize. Which syllable is more intense in criticize? Sorry? Criticize.
The first, but the last one is longer, or even more.
Yeah. Criticize. Yeah, there's more strength. That's why, yeah, this is why you thought that stress was on the last syllable, because it's more intense. But really, the stress is on the first syllable. Criticize. Yeah? In radio, okay, we kind of have the intensity on the first syllable, and it's longer, so it kind of it plays ball, right? So in English, we can see that all of the cues are important. And it's not easy to, like, if we were to ask a computer, okay, criticize, which syllable is stressed, it would be kind of difficult for a computer to tell, because there are no strict rules. It's always our judgment. And this is interesting when stress is analyzed, and that's why there are a lot of theories how to deal with stress and how to tackle it. Okay. Any questions on? Okay, so yeah, some more thoughts on stress. Functions. Yeah, slide number 10. Yeah, there's lexical stress, which helps us tell between words. Like, well, object and object are clear examples of this type of stress. But I think hot dog and hot dog are really a fun example, because if you have hot dog, you have two stressed words, and then hot dog you have one stress on dog, and this is lexical stress, which helps us distinguish between words and word forms. And there's also prosodic stress, right? No, I need a blue pen. So with this blue pen, with the stress on the word, you emphasize, and the word, well, the stress here has discourse function. Okay, cross-linguistically, slide number 11. Actually, it's 50-50. So in the World Atlas of Language Structures, 220 languages don't have fixed stress, and around 253 languages have fixed stress, right? So it's more or less the same number. And there's no regional, like, affinity of stress types. So it's all over the world, different stress systems. Okay, so that's kind of all I have on stress. So have you got any questions?
Well, I heard some, I'm not very good at phonetics, but I heard some claims that some languages which for native speakers understanding have stress, not really have stress, like French, like when we, like Russian speakers try to teach French, we think that stress is on the ultimate syllable, but I heard that in some theories we do not consider French as language with stress. So what does it mean? Can you comment?
I think
Or maybe I'm totally wrong.
I think this brings us to the next actually topic, which I wanted to deal with. So the question was, there are some languages where foreign speakers think that there is stress, but apparently there's no stress, and how to deal with it. And I think this brings us to the next topic of rhythm. Yeah, so on slide 12, I can see that, well, it's called stress and rhythm, right? And the thing is, researchers often compare speech to music, right? And in music, when we are playing something, there's also always a count, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're always counting in music. But so this gives rhythm to what we're listening to. But on the other hand, in music, to be like really musical, you have sometimes to slow down and to speed up. And some researchers say that the situation is similar in speech. When we construct phrases, we try to make them rhythmical. And sometimes to convey information, we speed up, sometimes we slow down. But somewhere in our heads, we think that, well, there's no metronome in our heads, but there's this intuition that some kind of rhythm exists in any language we're speaking. And depending on the language, the basic units of rhythm can be different. So in French, which was just mentioned, the basic unit of rhythm is syllable. So syllables are kind of small accentuated units which appear regularly. That's why you can think that actually the accents appear all the time in the language, and probably this is why you can say that the accent is not that pronounced, right? As compared to English, for example, where it's not that each syllable is stressed. Rather, groups of syllables are combined together, and the first of them is stressed, then there's a decrease in stress, and then another group of syllables comes. And this group is called a foot. Yeah, and you can see here that it's a stressed syllable and a number of unstressed ones. So this is how English and Russian work. So they are stress time languages, and I believe French and probably Spanish are syllable time. So for them, the basic unit is the syllable. Yeah, and it bears the rhythm of the language, and that's why we might think that stress is kind of less pronounced than in English. Yeah, the important thing actually about rhythm is that there were studies that tried to measure the durations of those basic intervals, syllables or feet, and the studies found that the durations are very different. So it's not music. Like in music, it's metronome, it's fixed. So if you have 60 bits per minute, then 1 beat is 1 second. In speech it's different, but it's good to think about this, at least phonologically, that there is some kind of rhythm. Okay, and on the next slide we can see some examples of feet with different numbers of syllables. But if you try to pronounce them, 70 large menacing dogs, right? It feels like each of the words has the same duration, more or less, right? 4 terrible black elephants. They're kind of rhythmical, right? It's like poetry, in a sense. So in poetry, the rhythm is fixed, and the duration of each syllable is more or less the same. Here, it's kind of like that, and this is a piece of evidence that shows us that maybe this notion of a foot as a basic unit of rhythm is not that bad. The problem with the duration is that, for example, in the last one, old administrators has a lot of syllables, and to put them into the same duration, you need either to make each syllable shorter, or you need to increase the duration of your foot, and probably that's what people do. That's why durations of those basic rhythmical units are different, because the numbers of syllables are different, and if there are lots of syllables, you don't have other choices. You have to lengthen your feet. Right, and this is called phonological isochrony. So the speakers think that the speech is rhythmic, but phonetically it's not. And another piece of evidence that tells us that rhythm does exist is on the next slide, slide number 14. So in standard English, the word clarinet has stress on the first syllable. It had a clarinet solo. Yeah, but he plays the clarinet. A native speaker would say it with this accent because the English language doesn't like stressed syllables to be close to each other. And another example is, for example, the word 19 in isolation has stress on the second syllable, 19. But when we say years, it's usually 1991. Not 1991, but 1991. Again, because the rhythmic structure of English doesn't allow stressed units to appear close to each other. Okay, so this kind of tells us that rhythm is a thing, it exists, and, well, there's some evidence for it. Okay, that's all for rhythm. Any questions about rhythm? Guys? Have you got questions? Oh, my video is off, sorry. Okay, if there are no questions, we can move to the next topic, which is tone. Okay, tone. Tone is defined by changes in F0, in fundamental frequency, or pitch, we can call it. So, like, what can cause changes if N0? Well, the most important factor is the action of the vocal folds. If they're stretched, if they're tense, then the voice goes up. Another factor is increased airflow. For example, if you think about playing a trumpet, if you blow more air, the voice goes higher because the sound waves have higher frequency if there's more air. So the similar thing is happening when you are breathing more intensely, right, while speaking. and this increased airflow raises the pitch. And the third thing is phonation type. So if your voice is creaky, which basically means that you are speaking on a very low frequency like this, right? You almost can hear individual pulsations of your vocal folds. This can also be used to differentiate tones. Okay, let's have a practical exercise. I sent you files on Mandarin Chinese. Now let's open them. You need to open the text grid and the audio. We have some examples of Chinese words with tones. Okay, I think I can share the screen now for you to see. Sorry? Oh, really? Oh, good. Okay, it was okay, yeah. So can you see my prod window? Okay, there's something wrong with the project, but anyway. So you can see my prod window. So what I did was read from file, open, read from file, pick the two files, open, then press shift, choose the text grid and the sound, view and edit. And this is how you do it. Okay, so I'll play the recording to you, and then we'll discuss the tones. And obviously, guys at home, you can play it yourselves, because I don't know what the quality of the sound will be.
清风为北体力。
Okay, so these were different sounds of Mandarin Chinese. We know that it's a tonal language, right? So how can we use prod to analyze tones? What should we do? Like, okay, we have this prod window. What's the next step?
Maybe we can see main pitch on the spectrogram.
Good.
We make it for you.
Thank you, Kirill. Yes, we can see pitch on the spectrograms. To do this, okay, for example, I want to choose the first two words, right? I left click, I press the left button here on the waveform, and I move my cursor to the right. Okay, and then I press cell, select. You should open both the text grid and the WAV, the WAV file. No, you need the Mandarin Chinese text grid and the Mandarin Chinese WAV file. You open the two of them. Right, so again, as I said, so pick the words and then choose the cell, right? So I've selected the first two words. So what do I do next? Kirill proposed to look at the pitch, and that's a wonderful idea. That's what we should do. So we push pitch, show pitch. Okay, and my settings are not really good for this analysis because it's too high, so I need to change the pitch settings. I'll put 100 here and maybe 400. Okay, what can we see? What can we see here? What kind of tones do we have in these two words? Yes. Can you see the pitch? Okay. Yeah, so what can we say about the tones? I'll play this again.
啊轻
Rising. Rising, sorry, rising. Falling. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So what Nastya is saying is that there's a tendency of the first vowel to go up in the end, to rise, and the second vowel seems to be kind of falling, but overall we can see that the pitch is pretty stable. Right? Okay, good thinking. Let's look at the second group. So, yeah, and way, something like that. I'm sorry for my awful pronunciation, but let's hear the speaker.
啊为啊为
And way. So, what can we see here?
Well, definitely increasing velocity.
Right, it's rising.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the pitch is rising. Yeah, it's clear. So in the first two words, we thought we saw rising and falling, but actually the magnitude of these rises and falls was much lower than in the second group of vowels, right? So we can see a rising pattern, and we can hear it actually. So, eh.
啊为
Way, yeah, so it goes up. Good. The third one. Let's hear it.
啊北
Bay.
啊北
What do we have here? Exactly. First it falls and then it rises. And can you see that in the middle there's no pitch contour? Why is it? Why do you think it happens? You see, the pitch contour is automatic in Pratt, right? So it uses the waveform to somehow measure where the beats appear. But if we zoom in on the sound, we will see that in the middle, the vertical lines, which are glottal pulses, become less frequent, right, as compared to the beginning of the sound, for example. And this is basically creaky voice. So we can see that the pulses in this area are less frequent and they are less regular than in the other areas. This is creaky voice, and we can hear it. She says, yeah, with this phonation. This is creaky voice, and Pratt is really bad at detecting creaky voice. But this means that the frequency has really gone down, really down. Yeah, and we can see it on the spectrogram. So yeah, this tone goes down and then goes up. Good. Last one. Oh, okay, we can hear it.
体
T. And the last one.
啊力
What can we see here?
啊力
So what's the pattern? Okay, yeah. Well, the first eye is kind of confusing because Pratt shows that it rises really quickly, but I think it's a problem of its measurement because there's nothing to analyze before this sound, and it has troubles really detecting the frequency. Basically, you can disregard this sharp rise in the beginning, and this tone is falling. Actually, and we can see it on Li. And again, in the end, you can see that the pulses become less regular, right? So the vertical lines were more or less. Mhm. In which word? In which word? In the previous one. E. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I was saying. So Nastya is saying that in this word here we have some artifacts within the pitch contour, and that's what I was saying. Pratt is really bad at processing creaky voice, and this is what we have here. Yeah. Yeah, so it doesn't mean that the pitch there is really high. It's a problem of Pratt which cannot process creaky voice correctly. You know. Okay, so the fourth contour is falling. Good. This is how we analyze tones. We look at pitch, and in most cases, when there's no creaky voice, there are no special kinds of phonations. It works fine, actually. So you can see everything, and you can devise the system. Yeah, and here on the next slide, we can see the. Okay? Can you see my screen, guys? I think you should. Right. Oh, okay, good. So these are the tones of. Okay, that won't go. The tones of Mandarin Chinese, and basically this is more or less what we have seen, right? Tone number 4, the last one, goes up and then down. Tone number 2 goes up. Tone number 3 goes down and then up. What do the numbers mean on the slide 17? So we can see T1 high level 5.5, T2 high rising 2.5, T3 low falling rising dip T14, 214, T4 falling 5.1. What do you think the numbers mean? Yeah, exactly. Good. And what's your name? Jordi. Okay. Yeah, that's exactly what this is telling us. Yeah, so the numbers are telling us the pitch. But as I said, in suprasegmental features, everything is relative. So we can't say that this exact frequency is responsible for high level tone. Yeah, that's why we assign numbers to the speech range, the frequency range of a person, kind of in our head, right? And annotate tones according to these numbers. So basically, if we say that 5 levels are enough to describe most tonal languages, right? High level tone 5.5 means that the person is speaking at the highest possible frequency when this person uses this first tone of Mandarin Chinese, right? So the second tone, high rising, the person goes from a lower register, number 2, into the highest one, number 5. The third tone, the person goes from kind of middle low register, the person goes lower and then goes up. So this is a way to describe tones by using relative pitch numbers. Okay? Is it clear? Good. And we can do this the same thing for Cantonese. And I'll open the file. You can do this yourself if you want to, but the important thing is to listen to them. You can open the Cantonese files in Pratt, and the tones are already annotated, right? So the numbers correspond to frequency levels. Can you describe what tones we have in this system, judging by the numbers? How many rising tones do we have?
Two rising.
That's right, 2 rising tones, 2.5 and 2.3, right? High rising and rising. Okay, how many falling tones? No, well, okay, the pitch here is kind of confusing. That's right. Exactly. It's not rising, it's not falling, it's called a level tone. So we have contour tones, we have contour tones which have some movement of pitch. And we have level tones that don't have any movements. And the tones marked by 5.5, 3.3, and 2.2 are level tones. There's no movement of pitch. Exactly, exactly. It looks like there's movement, but if you compare 5.5 to, for example, 2.1, the differences in 2.1 are larger. Okay, and I wanted to give you an example of Cantonese tones because it's interesting to hear the differences in level tones, right? Clearly, when there's a rising intonation, we can hear it. But what's the difference between level tones? So it's a horizontal, let's say, horizontal tone, which doesn't change its pitch, but it's on different levels, right? This is the highest one. This is the highest one. This is the middle one. And this is the lowest one. Can you hear it? So the pitch doesn't change, but the frequency on which the sound is produced changes. And this is the difference between different level tones. So level tones don't change their pitch. It's fixed, but it can be different. Okay, let's play it again. Like that. Okay, good. And on the next slide you can see slide number 18. Let's see Cantonese tones. right? So it has 3 level tones, which we have just heard, 2 rising tones and 1 falling tone. Okay, just a couple of, okay, maybe we can make a break actually, right? Is it time for break? Okay, we can make a break now, and then we'll continue with tones and finish up with intonation. Okay, so I'll see you in 10 minutes. Good. And for these systems, what's important is not the exact pitch of the tone, but rather the movement, right? So we can move from a high point to a higher point, or we can move from a low point to a bit higher point. In a contour system, this will be the same tone, but in register system, it's fixed. If it's high, then it's a high level tone. If it's low, then it's a low level tone. You can't mix those two categories. Another thing is that, for example, in Vietnamese, tones are combined with additional phonation types. So we know that there's breathy voice, like when you are speaking with this audible breathing like this, when you're speaking like this, when there's some fricative noise going on when you're speaking. So this is breathy voice. Creaky voice we just heard in the pronunciation of Mandarin Chinese vowels. And stiff voice, it's produced with really tense vocal cords and in the vocal tract, and it's like instead of ah, you have ah, something like that. So the vocal apparatus is really stiff. Yeah, and cross-linguistically, on slide 21, we can see data from walls. There are 307 languages in the world without tones, and 220 languages with tones. So of them, most of the languages with simple tone system, which means that there's a two-way contrast, high tone or low tone. And most of them are found in Africa. While complex systems which have contour tones, where pitch goes up or down, are mostly found in East and Southeast Asia. And we can see it on the plot here. So the red dots are contour system, and the pink dots are register system with level tones. Okay, and another property of tones, which is kind of interesting. We know, yeah?
I wanted to clarify, when we call simple tone system, we mean that we may have in such simple systems extra high and high tones in the total 4 tones, extra high, low.
Well, yeah, theoretically that's possible, but what the Walls classification says that simple tone systems in most cases have only high and low.
For Walls system, this 4 tone system that I just explained is complex, right?
Yeah, it will be complex. I'm not sure whether there are languages with just 4 level tones. Maybe there are, but
Maybe there are 5.
Manda, I guess.
sorry?
Manda, I guess. But the problem is that they will have something like combination of tones that is treated as like complex one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. But it's not treated as a, well, okay, it's a questionable thing, but yeah. Okay, so in terms of walls, simple tone systems have only high and low contrast, yeah, and everything aside from that is treated as complex. Okay, and on the 23rd slide, you can see what George just said. Basically, we know that assimilation processes happen to phonemes, right? When we speak, because of the way the vocal tracts function. Similar things actually happen with tones. So in Mandarin Chinese, if you have a combination of two falling rising tones, they change. So instead of fall, rise, you get rise, fall, rise. So instead of this W-shaped tone, you get a kind of a Z-shaped tone. So it goes up, down, and up instead of down, up, down, up. And instead of 4 movements, you get 3. This is a kind of assimilation. Or there's an even, I guess, more iconic, I would say, case of ethic where the tones combine together. So a high tone and a low tone produce a single one. So the word ke, which means N, has a high level tone. The second word canoe has a low level tone. When they combine together, they make this rise fall combined tone. Okay? Do you understand? Is this clear? On the 23rd slide, the ethic examples. So when a preposition has a high tone and the second word starts with a vowel on the low tone, the tones mix. And two separate level tones become a contour tone. It goes up and down. Yeah. And this actually raises a question whether it's a level system or is it a contour system? In isolation, there are no contour tones. In isolation, each tone has a level, right? But because of assimilation, we get tone movement, right? So it's a question. What to do with this? How do we treat tone system of the tone system of this language? Does it allow only level tones, or does it allow contour tones as well? Well, apparently it does, right? But so what should we do with this? And another interesting question is that in speech we don't usually say in and the canoe like separately from each other. Yes, it's a prepositional phrase, and if it's a phrase, then in connected speech, this is the way it's pronounced with the tone going up and down. So what's the underlying form? Is it so if we say the word in isolation, it has a high tone, but in real world speech, it's not said in isolation. It always interacts with other words, right? So if it frequently interacts with the words like the canoe in the market, is it reasonable for us to say that actually this in has a level tone and not a contour tone? Well, I don't have an answer to that question actually, but it's interesting to think about it, right? Because on the surface it sounds like when all the words are produced in isolation, it's a level system. But when they combine together, some things happen. Okay? Okay. The last topic for today, intonation. Intonation is quite interesting because this is definitely suprasegmental. Yes, it's on top of words, on top of phrases, on top of sentences, right? And apart from other features that we've discussed, intonation has meaning. So tone in itself doesn't have a meaning. Syllable doesn't have a meaning, but intonation does. Because, for example, if the intonation goes up, it usually means that the utterance is incomplete. Sometimes it means a question. And if it goes down, usually it means the end of a phrase, the end of a sentence, and a declarative something, right? So this is one feature of intonation. It conveys some meaning. This is the first phonological thing that we've discussed that has a meaning on the let's say discourse level. Also, intonation can emphasize focus, the new information in a sentence, and interestingly, intonation also reflects emotions, which is actually not a linguistic feature. It's probably something else, but that's a point for discussion, right? So intonation is a broad thing, but it really does have something to do with linguistics, with information structure, with information structure, I guess. So let's delve into intonation. Yeah. Okay, on the 25th slide you have. No, he wrote a book. No, he wrote a letter, right? So by intonation we can focus things, which I said. And on the 26th slide, you can see a hierarchy of intonations. So we've discussed that the basic units, the basic segments of speech are syllables, right? So, or feet. So combinations of a stressed syllable and unstressed syllable. Now, these units can be combined in intonational phrases, right? For example, yesterday I went to a shop and bought some apples, some carrots, and some cabbage. So carrots is an intonational phrase, right? Because it's separated by pauses from the other words. It has this falling tone in the end. I bought apples, carrots, and cabbage, right? So we have different intonational phrases consisting of one word. And the next level of hierarchy is sentence or utterance, right? Where we have larger chunks of information, which can also have their own intonation. And you can see here that they can interact with each other. For example, I missed the lecture. It's a pity. Clearly, we have two separate units. Yes, it's coordinated connection between the two sentences. It could be two sentences, right? I missed the lecture. Full stop. It's a pity. Or I missed the lecture. It's a pity. So we have two intonation phrases separated from each other, and they don't depend on each other, right? On the other hand, I missed the lecture because of the train. I missed the lecture because of the train. Here you also have two intonation phrases, but I missed the lecture goes up because of the train goes down, and this tells us that there's something going on between the two phrases, and they are connected to each other. And this is another property of intonation, right? And clearly it's difficult to analyze it because depending on the mood of the speaker, depending on individual preferences of the speaker. Pitch variations can be very different, and it's not easy to, again, to define criteria for analyzing intonation and intonation patterns. But the consensus is that intonation does exist even in tone languages, so it should be studied. On the 27th slide, you can see some approaches to intonation which were proposed. So the first approach was to analyze intonation in points. For example, you have an accent somewhere, that's your first point. You have an accent somewhere else, that's your second point. And then you just put points in your utterance and they form an intonation pattern. The problem is, how many points do you put? Right? If there's a peak here and a peak here, do you need something in the middle? Like if you have several syllables in the middle, do you put any points there? It's not clear, right? For example, if there's a falling pattern, how many points do you need to put into the pattern? Only the left and the right one, or something in the middle? It's not clear. Another approach was to analyze movements. Movements go up and down, and points are incidental, right? So it's just when something goes up and then goes down, there's a peak. But again, it's not clear what should be considered intonational. So if you have a tone on a syllable, does it make intonation or not? Not clear. Another approach was to use configurations, saying that, for example, questions go up and then down, but again, depending on the speaker, the pattern can break. For example, are you sure he's coming? Are you sure he's coming? Right? You have two rising tones. Are you sure he's coming? Or you can say, are you sure he's coming? Right? So you have two different intonation contours, but it's the same question, right? So there are difficulties with analyzing intonation. Okay. Still, there are some things that are considered to be universal. On slide 28, you can see that to distinguish intonation patterns, we need to establish boundaries. And the boundaries are usually falling tones or rising tones. And by them, through them, we can find the boundaries of our intonation units. Another thing which helps distinguishing intonation patterns is the movement itself. So if there's a direction up or down, or several directions up and down, it means that something is going on, some intonation is present. So these are the two main parameters: the final pitch direction and the movement itself. The range of movement is not really clear. As I said, like I bought apples, carrots, and cabbage, right? Apples, carrots, and cabbage. Each of the words, apples, carrots, form a small intonation phrase, and it's really short, right? So the range of the movement kind of is not very clear. How wide or narrow a phrase should be for it to have intonation. Or the height, high and low also. You can have peaks on some syllables, but it's really difficult to define the degree which is required for an accent to be considered intonational. Another interesting thing about intonation, and you can see it on slide 29, is that intonation can affect tones. On this slide, you can see that. So this phrase has several level tones, right? So it has a low, high, 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 low, and high. So, but sorry, it has contour tones. So rising, falling, rising, then high, then falling, then rising. Yeah, and what we see on slide 30 is that the rising tones maintain their differences in frequency, but they go down. Okay? Can you see it? I think, well, it was an amazing thing to see actually, because I wasn't expecting that. So basically, this is telling us that if you have a rising tone and the intonation goes down, it means that the tone will also go down with the intonation. It will be still rising, but it will be like like this. Yeah, with intonation, it will be still rising, but at lower frequencies. And this is called downdrift. And we're going to see this in the exercise, actually. The next thing is called downstep. This is an even more curious thing. So, level tone languages, right? For example, let's imagine a simple system: high, low, right? If you have intonation there, at some point your high tones can go down and become very similar to your low tones. And this is a scary thing for language to have, because if your high tones are on the same frequency as low tones, then your system breaks, right? And languages with level tones, actually, they don't allow intonation to happen everywhere, because it can mix with the tonal system. Rather, you can have changes in pitch of tones in places where the meaning is not ambiguous. And basically, this is what is shown here. You have 4 high tones, but because of intonation, the last 2 went a bit down. Okay. Let's practice. Open the intonation, sound, and text grid in Prague. And let's annotate the intonation. Yes? Were there any questions? Okay, am I sharing? Okay, so did you open the file? Let's hear the sentence. It's from a learner's book, an English learner's book.
Do your parents go out on Saturday evenings?
No, they don't. They stay in and watch TV.
So you have a question and an answer. Right? Let's annotate it. To do this, we're going to use tones and break indices and the simplified version. Right, on slide 33, you can see well, the markings that are used to do this. So H and L indicate peaks and bottoms in fundamental frequency. Asterisk is used to mark prominent syllables. Percentage mark is used to show boundary tones. Exclamation mark is used to show down-stepped accents. And we have three kinds of breaks: breaks between words, breaks between intermediate phrases, and breaks between intonational phrases. Okay, so let's analyze the first questions. The first question, sorry.
Do parents go out on Saturday evenings? Do parents go out on Saturday evenings?
So the first question is, do parents go out on Saturday evenings? Here in this text grid, we have breaks between words already annotated. And we need to annotate everything else. So we show intensity, we show pitch. Maybe pitch settings should be changed to standards. Okay, intensity and pitch. And so the first thing that we do is we find prominent syllables that are high or low, right? So which syllables are prominent here?
Do parents go out on Saturday evenings?
So which syllables are the most prominent here? Yes.
Do parents go out on Saturday evenings?
Yes, the parents. Yeah, the parents is one of the prominent syllables. So we put a mark in the feature tier. Is it high or low? Yeah, it's high, so we put an H and an asterisk. It's the highest point actually in the whole question.
Do parents go out on Saturday evenings?
Mm-hmm. What other high points do we have? Well, we have evenings. Yes. So on evening. Well, are you? Well, what do you mean less prominent? In which sense? In pitch? Yeah, pitch. Well, intensity is actually, it's more or less the same, I believe. So in parents it's like 87 decibels, and in evenings it's also 87. Can you see it? So actually we have two peaks here, on parents and evening. Yeah. Another thing to annotate is, so as I said, where was it? Yeah. Final pitch direction, boundary tones. It helps us to distinguish between intonational phrases. So here we have a question, it's an utterance, and in the end it has some intonation contour. Is it rising or falling?
Do your parents go out on Saturday evenings?
Is it rising or falling?
Evenings. Saturday evenings.
It is falling, yes. So your parents go out on Saturday evenings, yeah, and this gives us the idea of completeness. Yeah, that it's a complete utterance, and as we can see on the slide, as we can see on the slide, we use percentage mark to annotate boundary tones. So we put L percentage, right? So this is our boundary, which goes down. Okay, where's the lowest point?
Do your parents go out on Saturday evenings?
So we have a high point on parents, right? We have a high point on evenings. So somewhere in between there must be a low point. Yeah.
Your parents go out on...
So between parents and go, that's the low point, right? And this is our bottom. What else do we need? And in between them, we can annotate other intonations, but here it's more or less clear what's going on, right? So on parents and evenings, we have peaks. On between parents and go, we have something low, and then it stays for some time until it goes up on Saturday evenings. Okay, let's look at the second part. And actually, I don't want to annotate it. I just wanted to show you that. Let's look at the phrase, no, they don't.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
Or maybe even
No, they don't.
yeah, let's look at no, they don't. What's interesting here is that if you look at intensity, what can you see? Yeah. Oh, no, they don't. Sorry? Yeah, so basically we can see that intensity is kind of going down. Yeah, and so the peaks of stress on no, they don't. It's not no, they don't. Yeah, you don't get more energy on don't. You get less energy on don't. And this is exactly what was observed for tones on slide 31, right? So, or on slide 30. As intensity goes down in an intonation phrase, your peaks also become lower. Yeah, so on no, they don't, although both no and don't are accentuated, don't is less accented, right? And this shows us that there's some intonation contour going on. Yeah, and in the last bit,
They stay in and watch TV.
they stay in and watch TV. Again, we have
They stay in and watch TV.
a peak on stay in, and then kind of it decreases, right? So this is the effect of intonation on the prominence of stress and contours of pitch and intensity. Okay, so to wrap up, why do we do this? And I found an interesting study, which it's slide 34. I found an interesting study which analyzed perception of speech produced by non-native speakers, of English produced by non-native speakers, and the researcher found out that when non-native speakers had less variation in pitch, native speakers thought that they had accent. At least their speech was considered as having more accent, right? So if you have wider pitch range, if you can convey like more emotions and more intonation contours, then the speakers will think that your accent is better, right? Another thing is that non-native speakers who used too many stress in English. Yes, we understand that stress is language specific, but for English, we know that basic unit of rhythm is not a single syllable, but an accented syllable and several unaccented ones, right? So if you make too many stressed syllables, it sounds odd for an English speaker because the rhythm and the melody of language is different. So many stressed words, then you have an accent. So put stress wisely on the word. Long pauses, more accented. That's clear because if you make long pauses, it means that you have troubles finding words, and clearly the listener thinks that it's just difficult for you to talk. And so again, this is perceived as accent, right? So basically, this study of suprasegmental features, it can be applied in real life in teaching and in speech recognition and synthesis. Okay, to wrap up this thing, we begin from this notion of a segment, right? So the segment is a syllable. The basic segment here is a syllable, and the suprasegmental features are tone, stress, intonation, rhythm, and pauses, which we haven't discussed. All of these features are produced by our vocal tract, and we can distinguish between them through fundamental frequency changes, amplitude changes, loudness, let's say, duration, and common changes, so vowel quality. So this is how it works. Actually, that's all I have for you for today. So if you have any questions, you can ask them.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Question about the does it change tone in like phonological? Does it just reflect on, for example,
I'm sorry, Alexei, it's really difficult to understand what you're saying. I don't know, it's maybe the microphone or
Well, is it better?
It's much better, yes.
Okay, I have a question about downdrift, about whether it have any phonological effects. So, do any like low tones, like middle low and low, become the same, or it only affects like phonetics?
Well, phonologically, they still remain. So even in this case of downstep, right? So phonologically, they are all high tones. Phonetically, they change their frequency, but the point is the listener has to somehow understand that this is a high tone which has changed because of intonation, right? So this can only happen in places where there's no ambiguity.
I see.
But phonetically, yeah, frequencies do change.
Thanks.
Other questions? No? Well, okay, then let's call it today. It was nice having you here. Thank you for your questions and work. I hope maybe to see you sometime in the future again. So, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.